What's up, everybody? This is the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast, and I'm your host, Sean Dustin. Today is Monday, recording day, and also live stream day. We got two of them for you back to back today. But first of all, this episode of the podcast is sponsored by Get Past Your Shit, the book. The author, Kelly McCausey, who's also a friend of mine, and I've also been on her show as well, on her podcast. I don't think it's aired yet, but check it out. Check the book out. I just started reading it on my flight over to Tampa yesterday. I'm in Florida. That's why you see the different background. I don't have my green screen with me, so I can't do the whole, my whole branding behind me, but that's all right. I'll live. So yeah, anyways, check out the book. And let's see. Our second broadcast will be at 3:00, and that will be with Chris Newby. We will be talking about Lyme disease, which is crazy. I'm from the West Coast, so I don't really know a whole lot about Lyme disease. I haven't even heard about it really. So I'd be really interested in hearing that one. And then I'm also talking to Shannon Andress right now, and she's in the green room waiting, and she has a podcast called You Got This, The Journey. And also we'll be talking about how she deals with anxiety and depression and how she sort of gets through it in her day-to-day life. If you're watching this on YouTube, do me a favor, thumbs the video up and subscribe. Anywhere else, subscribe and share on the podcast platforms. This will be airing in about, let's say, a month. So if you're listening there, also subscribe, because that will help me to become more visible on those platforms themselves. So I will be back with Shannon after these messages.
Sean Dustin spent time in federal and state prison for drug trafficking and fraud. Upon release in 2006, he had nothing but the clothes on his back, a bag of mail, and legal paperwork. In 2010, he kicked a long-time methamphetamine habit and started the long climb back up the ladder of life. This is the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast. If you want transparency and authenticity, you're in the right place. This is the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast, and this is Sean Dustin.
Hey, Shannon, how's it going?
Good. I was just dancing in my seat to that awesome intro.
Thanks. Yeah, you like to dance. I noticed that on your Instagram page. You are dancing all of the time.
I like to refer to it as mom dancing because I don't think it's good dancing. I don't think it's cool, but it'll make you laugh. So
I don't know. You did a pretty good job to me. I'm not I can't say that I'm not a good dancer, because I am when you can get me up and doing it and out of my own head and my way. I'm all right, but I think you look great dancing. You got some good moves. Some of the older ones too that I noticed.
yeah, I see all the kids doing like these new, I don't know, shuffling steps and all these like fancy footworks. And I'm like doing the hustle, rolling my arms and everything.
All right. So why don't we let everybody know a little bit of backstory on how you and I know each other? Basically, Clubhouse. There's another guest from Clubhouse, everybody. You're probably going to get tired of hearing me say that name.
Yeah, I go through the same thing on my show. It's like everybody, Clubhouse.
Clubhouse. Where's this thing? What's this infamous Clubhouse that I can't get on because I'm an Android user? It's probably maybe a good thing that you're not on there, because it does take up a lot of time sometimes if you let it. So you got to be careful with that.
Mm-hmm.
So tell everybody a little bit about yourself, your podcast, and the reason why we're here, which is to talk a little bit about mental health and your struggles with anxiety and depression, and kind of how you get through it.
Yeah, so I recently experienced my own battle with my mental health because this past year during the pandemic and in the year of 2020, I really started to experience feelings of anxiety and depression that I had never gone through before. Like, I was never somebody that dealt with anxiety attacks. This was totally new to me. And since it was so new to me, I didn't know how to deal with it and treat it when I started experiencing these things. So during this past year, when I started to feel anxious and scared, I was just suppressing my feelings and not acknowledging them. I was turning to friends and family and looking for somebody to just tell me everything's okay. You're being ridiculous. What you're thinking isn't true. It's not going to happen. You're fine. And I just kept burying it down and burying it down. And because I wasn't acknowledging it and taking care of it, I unfortunately fell into a bit of a depression where I just had completely lost sight of doing anything anymore. Like, I just didn't see a point in getting up and getting ready for work and putting effort into myself anymore, because it just felt like if we're never going to be able to do anything anymore, and if I'm going to die, then what's the point in me getting up and putting, some work into my purpose in life? And so after a long time of struggling and being so negative to those around me and always asking them to help me, I realized that I wasn't being a good support person for them. Like, I wasn't being there for my family and friends the way that I could be, because I was just constantly asking them to reassure me. So I eventually made the decision to go and see a therapist and get help, because it was getting to just a point where it was physically hurting me. Like, I was involuntarily shaking. I was getting sick from it, chest pains, all of that. And it just wasn't a healthy way to be living my life. So I finally went and got help, and I spoke to a therapist who gave me great tips and tricks of how to overcome an anxiety attack and deal with these anxious feelings I was having. And as I started to apply them and realized that I wasn't ridiculous, I wasn't crazy, and what I was feeling was completely valid, I began to realize that this feeling will pass and I can get through this. So after going through that with my mental health, it kind of put me on this journey to where I just became addicted in a way to finding the solution to become the best person I could be in every aspect of my life. Like, if I could just find these small tips and tricks to change my mental health, why not become the best I could be with my physical journey, my spiritual journey? And so I began this process to live the best life that I could be. And along the way, I was like, wow, if I don't share this with people, that's selfish, because there's a ton of people out there who are struggling right now, a ton of people who are going through exactly what I went through and are lost and need guidance. And what's frustrating about mental health is a lot of people don't realize that they're struggling unless they're at the very most severe end of mental health. So I want to bring awareness to it and educate people and let them know that they're not alone through my podcast, and finding ways that we can better ourselves and live a much happier and healthier life.
Yeah, that's awesome. A question that I have for you, with the anxiety. My ex-wife suffered with anxiety, and it was for somebody who doesn't, at least not to that point to where it's debilitating. Like, I mean, I could understand, like, being anxious, not being able to anxious being at home alone, not wanting to, like, fear of missing out. I would go out and do things because I would feel anxious in some ways, but not like the kind of anxious that the anxiety that I think that you're talking about. And so, did you ever experience, where anybody maybe thought that you were using it as a crutch, or, as an excuse, or anything like that?
Yeah, a lot of people around me immediately thought that there were problems in my relationship or problems with my job, and that's why I was anxious and depressed. And truthfully, both of those things were doing better than they've ever been before. and they were not the problems. And so many people thought, oh, like, are things going wrong with your boyfriend? Like, are you anxious about your relationship? And I was like, no, thank God for him. I wouldn't be able to get through these moments if he wasn't there. So yeah, I think a lot of people make assumptions about where these feelings are stemming from. And meanwhile, there really doesn't have to be a specific thing that's causing it. Anxiety comes on in all forms, and that just leads to a depression. And for me, it was more so just feeling anxious about the future, which is what a lot of people with anxiety suffer, is that they cannot be present. They're constantly worrying about what's going to happen and what they've done in the past, but they cannot stay present in the moment and just appreciate what's around them.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. So what are a couple of tricks that you learned from, let's say, what are some of the two of the most effective things that you learned to help get you through this?
Yeah, so originally, before I went to therapy, I was burying everything down and just saying, you're ridiculous, you're ridiculous, you're ridiculous. And that is the worst thing to do. What you actually should be doing is acknowledging the anxiety when it comes on and recognizing that these feelings are coming up for you, and then talk to yourself. Like, some of the things I have had to have said to myself were, where is this coming from? Is there any truth to this? Did you see anything in the news? Did you see an article that supports this theory that you've created in your head? 95% of the time, there is no truth coming from what I'm feeling. It's a valid fear for sure, and it's acceptable that I'm afraid of it, but there's nothing to back it up. So if none of these fears are going to come true and there's nothing telling us of that, then why am I getting so upset with this? And then another thing is, I can't continue to worry about what's going to happen because I can't control that. So you need to find a way to get yourself into the present moment. There's a lot of different ways to do this, but what's best for me is I do kind of a guided meditation where I take deep breaths in and out, and then I look at 5 things around me that I'm grateful for. 5 things in that present moment that I have with me that I can appreciate and hold on to and know that they're here. And that's what I can focus on in this moment right now. And remind myself that everything is going to be okay. These crazy, I hate to say crazy because it's not crazy, but these thoughts that I've created in my head, they're not going to happen. And everything around me in this very moment is fine.
Yeah, that staying in the present moment is actually one of the main things. And then also, yeah, the meditation, because I talked to some people recently that I had on, and they talk about meditation and how it's taken them to certain places. And I think I haven't tried it yet. It's one of those things, like, I got so many cool things that people have told me, from being on, from having a podcast and having all these different guests, that I never tried. And so meditation, I think, is one that I definitely want to try. But the mind is crazy, man. If you let it, it will manifest everything that you don't want in your life, if you allow it to have that power over whatever it is. Like, I've actually experienced this myself, and I was like, oh my God. I was like, there was one thing that I did and I was trying to hide it. And then it was like this whole thing that I'd made up into my head. And, before I knew it, like, oh my God, I'm going to get fired and all this other stuff. And it's like, I almost, like, it ended up fixing itself. But I mean, it's like, I took myself through this roller coaster of like, whoa. And, probably could have gotten myself fired.
Yeah, I've done that so many times too, where I've convinced myself that I'm going to lose my job. And then I talked about that with my therapist, and she was like, well, is there any supporting facts that you're going to lose your job? I was like, no, but I've created the talk I'm going to have with my boss tomorrow. It's like, but you can't do that. You have to think of your last conversation. What are you doing now? And then you realize, I am not at risk of that at all. Why did I just create and you create a full scenario? Like, you can completely visualize and see what's going to happen.
Yeah, that's so crazy. But I mean, not crazy, because you do, like, I literally had the whole thing planned out. The conversation already had happened with it. So I'm like, maybe I do have anxiety. I don't even know it.
Yeah, it's so interesting because right before this, I was in a room with other mental health advocates where we were talking about anxiety and where it stems from. And one of the doctors came on and he brought up such a great point. He said that our brains were not meant to find the good. We were meant to be alert and find problems, find things that we were in danger of. We were hunters and we weren't going to find a friendly bear. We were out finding what was going to hurt us. So no doubt our brains are looking for problems and things that are going to harm us. And we have to train our brains to find the good and to focus on that.
Oh, that's such a great point. I didn't even think about it like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I mean, that's why, everybody says live in love, because when you live in love, you don't let anything else. That's all that comes in. And fear is, I mean, there's a whole bunch of different, things for that one. False evidence appearing real, F everything and run. There was another one I heard recently that I was like, oh, I've never heard that one before. And I wrote it down in one of the many notebooks that I have, and super unorganized in that manner. But yeah, so your podcast, you've got about 8 episodes on there right now, right? Including your trailer.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I mean, for somebody that suffers with anxiety, I mean, that had to have been difficult. I mean, was it a difficult thing for you to start doing it, or did you experience any like, what is that imposter syndrome? Because I know I did.
I feel like I live in imposter syndrome. I have to say, in every aspect of my life, I struggle with that so much. And yeah, it was so hard for me because number one, I told my boyfriend, and that was it, that I went to therapy. I'm actually starting, like, I'm trying to think to myself, who did I tell that I went to therapy? It was just my boyfriend. So when I decided to come out with this podcast about my experience, none of my friends had known that I had to go into therapy. My parents had no idea, my siblings, my work, nobody knew about that. And so knowing that I was going to release this and I wanted to be open and honest and help people, it also was really scary because I didn't really prep anybody with what I was going to say. And I also grew up in a time where a lot of people said, don't air your dirty laundry. It was like, keep that stuff at home, keep it private. And so to come out and choose to be an advocate where I would be sharing the good, the bad, and the very ugly times of this was terrifying, absolutely terrifying. But what was more overwhelming was the thought that there's a lot of people out there who feel this way, that are struggling, who feel like they can't talk about it, have nowhere to turn. And I just felt this overwhelming responsibility that I had to speak up about this and that I had to do something.
Yeah, I think that's where you and I really intersect, because we both sort of share that same, transparency and authenticity of like, look, man, this is my mess that I made behind me. This is my message that I'm pushing forward. Go ahead, look at all of it, man. I'm not proud of it, but I'm definitely, not going to be ashamed of it anymore. And move through it instead of around it, or trying to go over it. Just go right through it. And people really want that. And isn't it crazy? It's like, the one thing that people want is to hear your lowlights, right? But everybody, like you just said, oh, don't air your dirty laundry. Don't do this. Don't do that. The things that keep us sick, the things that keep us stuck. Why is that? I mean, have you ever thought about that? It's like all the things that are good for us, we're always told not to do.
Well, you know what it is too? I think there's so many people on social media who they're not sharing the bad times. They're not sharing what they went through. Everybody looks glamorous, that they have the perfect relationship, the perfect home, the perfect life, and nobody's showing that. And so a lot of us have this false idea that you don't have to go through the bullshit to get to the good stuff. And I think that that's why a lot of us forget that, is because what we're seeing is a fake picture every day. You're not seeing all the hard times that a lot of people went through. And, for me with my page, I never want to come on as like the girl who's posing in a bikini by the beach. I mean, if that's a picture I take, fine. But like, I don't want to always be posed and perfect and acting like I have my life together. I mean, I go through funks and hard times, and I want to display that so that people stop looking for that picture perfect lifestyle.
Yeah, that's I'm tired of that. I know that social media, that's probably why Clubhouse was so attractive to me, is it wasn't like you were going into these rooms and you couldn't see anybody. I mean, yeah, you could see their their little profile picture, but I mean, that's not like, you can't go and like, follow the rabbit hole of all their pictures and this and that and get caught up in that part of it. But you actually had to listen to them. And I guess you could fake some things, but I think that I think it's a lot more difficult to like act, you know, act out of with your voice. I don't know, man. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, like I used to be, I mean, I still am. I don't know why I said used to be. I'm a terrified public speaker. Like I hate public speaking. Even in a clubhouse room, if I sound confident, my chest is broken out in hives, my armpits are sweating, my voice is cracking. Like I'm never confident up there. But it's so much easier for somebody to take a confident picture and post that than to actually have to use their voice, form a sentence, and keep going even after they've stuttered over their words. So I think you're right. It's, you don't have a filter. You don't get to go back and edit what you wrote. What you say is what you said, and it's out there.
Yeah, that's what I love about it. So yeah, and that's so interesting. Yeah, when you really start to think about it, and the magic is in the struggle, right? And that's where we used to learn. I mean, when we would sit around those fireside chats, think about the village hunter. You mentioned hunter gatherer, so whatever villages, culture, society, whatever the name of that is. We all were around a campfire at some point. The children were being tended to by everybody. It wasn't just, oh, this is your family. It's like the kids, it takes a village to raise a kid. I mean, that really makes a lot of sense when you think about it that way. And then, you share, right? You share when you come back from, your day, and let's say, little Johnny over there ate something that, everybody didn't know was bad. Well, now they shared all that. Now the whole village knows not to eat that. And so it's community. And I think that we've either gotten so big, population wise, that it's almost too difficult to maintain that type of community that we need. Because I mean, what should be happening in our neighborhoods, but I mean, how many times have you lived somewhere where you never knew your neighbor? Like I've done that tons of times. I've had apartments where I had no idea who was next to me, above me. It's like I just didn't even care.
Yeah, me too. Me too. And that's why too, like, I think for a lot of people, we have to stop looking at these numbers. How many followers do you have? How many people are you following? Well, if they're all people that make you feel like crap, or they trigger your anxiety, and it's not that influence that you need, then only have the 5 followers that make you feel good every day. Don't strive for that 10,000 followers if it's all going to be stuff that's not benefiting you. So I think you have to really filter out a lot of your friend groups, not just on social media, in life too. If there's people around you just that aren't serving you, it's totally okay to end those relationships and remove some of that toxicity.
That's a great point. Yeah, toxicity. I know a lot about toxicity. I used to be a super toxic person, and I've had to do that as well. And you can curate your feeds to do that too. And I heard you talking about that with that. I can't remember what his name is. It was the other day that you were on the Instagram live.
Yes.
And you were talking about curating your feed. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it's kind of hard to do at first. When I first went through this experience with overcoming my anxiety, not overcoming, but learning to deal with my anxiety and my depression, a lot of it had to do with, what are you being surrounded with every day? Are there things that you're allowing to trigger you and to hurt your mental health? And there were a lot of people that were close to me that the things that they were posting or the funny things that they were sharing, as funny as it may have been to them, it was absolutely terrifying to me. And so, as much as I love those people around me and they'll continue to be friends and family, I had to click on their stories and mute them and hide them and just take it out of my life. Not that I'm taking them out and I'm saying that, you know what, I can't be your friend anymore because of what you're posting, but I don't want that to be thrown in my face every single day. And Facebook, I had to do that a lot with because I was just scrolling through and it was all of these political fights and people going back and forth. And a lot of people just sharing false information too. Everybody thinks they're the expert. And because they saw one video, they know exactly what they're talking about. So not only are you seeing things that trigger your anxiety, but you're seeing false information that's triggering your anxiety. So I just had to go through, and anytime I see something, and I still do it to this day, if it upsets me, I just click on the person, and if I'm going to unfollow them or block them, fine. But if it's just to mute their posts, then I just mute them.
I feel that way about mainstream media. Like, I don't watch TV anymore. Like, I don't watch news. I don't watch regular cable. I've just kind of unplugged from all of it. And you know what? I am a lot happier throughout the day because that constant, the thing, whatever gets blah, 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 blah at you all the time is gone. And so it's like to the point, and I've said this quite a few times, but when I turn on the news now, it's like almost like, oh God, get it off, get it away.
Well, and I think people don't realize the news is putting out these stories and these conversations for shock factor to increase ratings. So a lot of the stuff is amplified, or it's being told in a way where they want to get a reaction out of you. So no, that's one problem with the news, but well, in addition to many other things. But in my opinion, there's a lot of things that I see where it's like, okay, what am I going to do? There's nothing I can do about that. There's nothing that I can do right here, right now, and it's affecting where I am. So why am I going to watch it, get anxious about the future, and begin to live in fear? So I just choose, I'm with you. I don't watch the news anymore. I just don't care to look at it.
Yeah, and we do have some. So sorry, the Big Dumb Pod. I know you made some comments here, and they were buried on the side because I'm on a different TV, and it. Man, I couldn't see that there was an alert there. So sorry about that, brother or sister, depending. So they said, yes, so important. So probably to what we were talking about, one of the things, and I think there's quite a few things that we touched on that are pretty important. And then also I feel that all the time. I'll just feel like I'm just going to die when I'm completely healthy. Yeah, I felt like that too. I've actually, I felt like that when I've taken, not to change it over, but I mean, because I microdosed THC, and before I got my dosage down, there was a point where some of the pieces of chocolate that I was taking had more THC in it than because I was making it myself, and it took too much, and I felt like I was going to die literally. Just from that. So when people go, "Oh, yeah, well, you're trying to get high," dude, there's nothing fun about that.
No.
Not
I know
at all.
though. I know what this person's saying though. Like when you have anxiety, you get a headache, which could be from allergies or from a cold. And your brain could be like, oh my gosh, I'm having an aneurysm and I'm going to die. Like your brain just goes to the worst possible places with really what is the most simple and common things that happen to everybody all the time. I used to get really bad heartburn, and I was convinced every time I was having a heart attack. I went to the urgent care several times thinking that I was dying. And they're like, you just have gas. Like you just got to go take some acid reflux medicine. You're fine. But when you're anxious, it's, I laugh about it now because I was able to get through it. But at the time, it is absolutely terrifying. And the thoughts that are going through your head are just so negative. Like, I don't know, think of saying goodbye to the people around you. But for something so minor that you don't need to be getting that worked up about, it's really difficult.
I thought I was the only one that did that like, I went to the doctor too. I went to the emergency room too with that. And I'm like, I can't believe I'm going to, they're like, you just got gas or a heartburn or something. And I'm like, oh man, I remember I used to be a hypochondriac, man. I
Mm-hmm.
would go to the emergency room for like the little, you know what, maybe I do suffer with anxiety just a little bit. It's not as bad anymore, but like now that you're sort of explaining the things that you've gone through, I'm like, oh my god, I've gone through like quite a few of the same things. So
There's so many different levels of it. Like people don't realize that we all experience anxiety in some way, in some form. So it could be, when a physical reaction's coming on, you get anxious, or it could be in your everyday work life. There's so many different forms that comes on in. So I think everybody has anxiety in some way, at some level. We all are dealing with it.
yeah, that's what it sounds like. So you're doing quite a few different things. So you're on that. What was it that I saw you on? Because I know you're going to be a regular on that now, right?
So his show, it's a podcast, but he just does it through Instagram Live. So it doesn't go out to like Apple, Spotify, or any of those other hosts. It's just through the Instagram page that they have. But I will be coming on as a returning guest. But yeah, I've just been trying to get on as many shows as I can because I just want to keep having these conversations because I don't feel like they're happening enough. So any opportunity I get to talk about what I went through and just explaining the different resources that people have that are available to them and the ways that we can improve, I'm going to take any opportunity I can to share that message.
So I haven't checked out your podcast, but I'm going to. What? So of the 8 episodes, what's you've gotten your feet wet, and you kind of know what it takes now. What direction do you want to take it? Do you have like a vision for it, or?
Kind of. So my first goal was for Mental Health Awareness Month, which is in May. I wanted every single week to be an interview with a guest that is some sort of expert in the mental health field or somebody who's experienced a different aspect of mental health that can share their knowledge of it to me and my listeners. So proud to say every single week in May, there will be a different expert talking about mental health. But I just want to continue to find people that inspire me and will inspire my guests. And eventually, I think my mindset has kind of shifted with this podcast because originally it was just going to be a passion on the side and I just wanted to help people, which I still want to do. But now I'm trying to think of other resources I could provide. Like, what if I got certified in different ways of coaching, whether it be health and life coaching or fitness? I would love to just be able to give myself more so that I could give my listeners more.
Yeah, it's funny with podcasting. We start it with one reason, that kind of like our why as to why we're doing it, and then it just sort of takes on a life of its own because you realize as you're learning and as you're changing and as you're evolving in it, you're seeing the opportunities that that could be. You know what I mean? You're like conceptualizing different things that could be possible from it, and that sort of takes on a direction, and before you know it, when you're at like 100, and I'm telling you this because when you're at like 100, you'll look back and you're like, god, how did I go from this concept to where I am now and where this is now? So it's really crazy.
Yeah, and since I started this, I really can't focus on anything else but the podcast. Like it's all I want to be doing all day, every day, finding new topics to discuss and more content to give out to my listeners. So now that I've become so obsessed with it and wanting to make it my life, I'm like, okay, how could I make it my life where it could financially support me and I could be giving more to people? So still exploring. I feel like it's still kind of early on, but that's what I'm thinking the vision will be.
So what is your regular job? Because for me, this is my wish could be job.
So my regular job, I am a technology consultant. So I teach brokers in the insurance industry how to use the technology services we provide so that they could securely quote different insurance carriers and submit their clients' information.
Do the people in your professional life know you have a podcast?
No, this is so funny. I was just interviewed on another show and it was about mental health in the corporate world. And the guy was like, "So, in your corporate world, do they know about your struggle with mental health?" I was like, "No. Oh my gosh, I haven't told a single person." my my boss, my coworkers, nobody knows that I'm doing this. And it's funny. It's not like I'm hiding it or I'm ashamed, but I just am not talking to them about it. And now it feels like I'm living a double life.
No, well, I mean, it's. I went through this too, and it's not that part of me wanted to tell everybody, because I had this, my because I use my first and my middle name as Sean Dustin. My last name is something different, and the reason why I did it that way is just because, not that I don't like my last name or I didn't want people to know. It's just my last name is Clark, and it doesn't carry over. It doesn't carry on. Dustin moves through. It's like a Hollywood stop. Clark is just like, and then you got to start. So that's the reason why I have that. But I had two different Facebook accounts. So one of them for my union, and all my, union brothers and were over here, and sisters were over here. And then all of my podcasting things were over here. And I was just like, well, I think I'm just going to leave it that way, because I don't want to hear anything from anybody, because I don't know, it was just weird. To me, I felt like the people that were over in this area were way more supportive than the people that were over in this area.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, why, if I kind of know what the answer is, why do I need to search for it? And all I'm just going to be doing is opening myself up to be disappointed, maybe. So I just didn't even bother.
Yeah, I feel like I mean, it's funny, even though I haven't told anybody that I'm doing this from my job, it would be so easy to find out. Like, my name's on it. I share it on my personal accounts. So if there's anybody that follows those accounts, they'd easily be able to see this podcast and everything that I'm doing. So eventually, I'm sure they're going to find out. Oh, I think it froze a little bit.
It did it. Well, almost to be here. All right. You there?
Yep, I'm here.
Almost got through started doing that. Damn it. So for everybody who just witnessed what happened, I'm on my for some reason my hotspot kicks it off at about half hour or a little bit over, and I got caught up today doing, like, trying to get everything done because of traveling and everything else, that I tried to get onto the internet for the hotel, and it was way too complicated. So I'm like, just screw this. I don't have time for it. And so I put the hotspot on, and now it's kicking me in the ass for not doing, for being lazy about stuff. So anyways, back to you and your podcast. And I like talking to people about podcasting. Podcasting is really, to me, it's kind of what saved my life and gave me my voice back, which I think a lot of people can identify with that.
Mm-hmm.
Talk a little bit about that if you have experiences with what I just said.
Yeah, so a big issue that I had this past year, and what was so hard for me when I was going through my depression, was just I didn't have a passion at all anymore. And I just had no idea what my purpose was. Like, every day I was just going through the same motions of get up, sit on my work computer, do my work, try and get a workout in, have a glass of wine, watch TV, go to bed, eat, sleep, repeat. Like, same exact thing every single day. And so I had nothing where I felt like, if I die tomorrow, this is what I'll be remembered for. And this is what people are going to say, wow, Shannon did that. I felt like I had nothing to show for myself. And it was so upsetting. And I wanted to really dive into my spiritual connection and overall be more healthy, so that I could connect more with what I'm meant to be doing in this world. And for everybody, it's different. And it's a sad question, because a lot of people, if you ask them what their passion is, most people cannot answer that. They have no idea what their passion is, and therefore they can't really see what their purpose is. So when I started to feel along this journey, this overwhelming feeling to share my voice and this responsibility to talk about what I was going through, I thought of all the different platforms that I could turn to. Like, should I do a newsletter? Should I do a blog? Should I just post on social media? But I am just not a good writer. Like, I could never do a blog. That just sounds so exhausting to me, to just be typing up paragraphs after paragraphs every single day. And I just love talking to people. I love using my voice. I love having conversations. So eventually I found podcasting. It was never something I had dreamed of before, but it just seemed like the best fit when it came to sharing my message. And I had no experience. People said, just do it with your headphones and your iPhone and you can do that. It'll be fine. And I was like, no, if I do that, I'm going to chicken out, because if I don't set myself up with, look, you've made the investment, now you've got to go through with it, I would have chickened out. So bought this microphone, purchased a subscription with Buzzsprout, and went on to like a YouTube craziness of just studying every video I could about podcasting and dove right into it.
Yeah, it's great. YouTube, same thing.
Yeah.
That's where I learned how to do it, and then from there on it was talking to people and other podcasters, and getting into the Facebook groups, and then from there it was that I was there for a long period of time, but then I found the Clubhouse, and the information that they were giving there was like, oh my god, like I would usually have to. Usually this is all behind a paywall and I'm getting it for free.
I know. And sometimes it's overwhelming, because sometimes you go in those rooms and it's like, wow, this is such a supportive community, and I can't believe all these different people that are podcasting. But other times you go into those rooms and you're like, who the hell do I think I am? Why do I think I can podcast? I clearly don't know anything.
No, that was exactly it. When I felt like a beginner all over again as soon as I got to Clubhouse. I'm like, geez, there's so many things that I'm not doing that I should be doing.
Yeah.
I'm going to go back 1 second, and we got about 5 minutes, and we're going to wrap this up. How, you talk about the anxiety and all the things that you were going through, and you said you had a relationship, or you're in a relationship. You have a boyfriend. Mm-hmm. How was he through this? Like, was it difficult? I mean, I imagine he was supportive, but I mean, is it difficult for him to kind of understand kind of what you were going through? Because I've always felt helpless. Like I don't know what you need.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, thank God for my boyfriend. Like, thank God for him. I could not have asked for somebody more supportive and more understanding, which is kind of like weird to say because he doesn't deal with this, so for him to be so understanding and know what to do was just so incredible. And I think I was just lucky with a good partner who knew how to be there for me. But I felt bad because although he never said this, and I don't think he ever felt this way, I started to feel like, you've got to be sick of me asking you all the time to tell me everything's okay. Like, this has to be exhausting to have somebody hysterically crying, shaking, asking you if everything's okay and are we all right. Like, it has to be exhausting. So he did eventually, say to me, like, I'm here for you and I will absolutely be there, but I don't know all the things to say and do. And what if you need more help? Like, he just knew, like, he can only offer me so much help. And so he encouraged me, go to therapy, see somebody, I support you. And at that time it was virtual, so I couldn't go into somebody's office. So he would ask me, do you need your privacy? Do you need me to step out of the apartment for a while? Like, what can I do to support you and be there for you? And I'm just forever grateful for him and for how amazing he was, because that really helped me to feel okay with going to get help.
That's awesome. That's awesome to be able to find somebody like that, it sounds like that supportive and just sort of gave you the space to kind of figure it out while being supportive.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So Shannon, I got to wrap this up. I've got another one starting here at 3:00, which is actually going to be 6:00 here. What is it? 5:48. And see if I can't get this internet thing figured out within 5 minutes. I doubt I will, though. But go ahead and plug your stuff if you want.
Yes. So please go and check out my Instagram page. It's YouGotThis_the journey. I post on there motivational tips and tricks, quotes, funny videos, just something that you can turn to every day for some positive content. Also on there is a link tree with the link to the podcast that you can listen to on Apple Music, Spotify, and all of the major podcast listings. So check it out and DM me if you have questions or you're struggling. I really do answer everybody that reaches out to me. So I'm always here for you. And just remember, you got this.
Awesome. Thanks, Shannon. I appreciate it. I love your energy, and I definitely will keep watching your videos because they do make me smile and put me in a better mood.
Oh, good. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, no problem. All right. See ya.
Bye.
All right, everybody. That was a great episode right there. A great interview with Shannon Andress. Not only is she a colleague, but she is a friend too. And so what I'm going to do is, like I said, this episode of the podcast is being sponsored by Get Past Your Shit, 19 stories of imperfect people who prove you can. And let's go and shoot up this one more time here. The way that I was supposed to be doing is it would be on this book would be on the back graphic of me, but I'm not at home. And so I had to follow through with what I was going to do in a different way. So, better something than nothing, right? My next guest is going to be Chris Newby. So I'm going to pull out of this and we will go to that here at 3:00 at the top of the hour. So I will see you then in about 10 minutes.
You've been listening to the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast. Sean is a single dad, a union blue-collar guy, and he spent time in federal and state prison for drug trafficking and fraud. When he was released from prison in 2006, all he had was the clothes on his back, a bag of mail, and some paperwork. Since then, he's turned his life around and shares the struggles and successes on this podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we hope you were moved. To connect to the show, book a guest spot. For merch, Patreon, PayPal, and social media links, go to linktr.ee/nowhere to go but up. On Instagram at Nowhere to Go But Up Now. On Twitter at But Up Now. On the YouTube channel at Nowhere to Go But Up Podcast. See you next time.